Where will the whale head coaches land in the 2024 offseason? And are the playoffs overrated? Do teams look too much into being bad and still in the playoffs? All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson mailbag.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big ups to the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. We appreciate you for that. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's Jace, Jase, medical.com. All right, mailbag time. Got a tons of questions to get to here. Of course, the coaching carousel happening right now. The big one on Tuesday was the firing of Mike Vrabel, and there's still potentially more to come and be added to the list, but that makes 6 teams now that have head coach vacancies. And maybe, Matt, this is my own question to you before we get to the question from our listeners. Is this the best crop of head coach candidates we've had in a while? Maybe, I don't know, ever?
Yes, I think is the answer. I mean, I think it's a one-word answer, that there's a lot of highly qualified guys, and usually we're not talking about whales, I mean, there's some big name dudes that have won, a ton of games at this level. And sometimes I think that every coaching cycle is different. Like I always go back to last year at this time when half the league changed offensive play callers / coordinators. Like, was there really 16 great candidates out there, to improve your better than the 16 that got canned? You know what I mean? Like sometimes the pool's not as deep as you think in terms of making coaching changes. And it's always a hard thing to comment on, but I don't know that anyone really talks about it in that regard. But in terms of guys I would like to take over my favorite team, there's plenty out there that I'm really intrigued with this year. So yes, I think this is a great crop.
Scott's question on Twitter is, where will those whale head coaches land this offseason? What are the best landing spots? Let's try to draw some connections here between those jobs and some of these coaches and where we think they might fit. I want to start with the Raiders because to me, they're a whale-only destination. And it might be a Jim Harbaugh destination because Antonio Pierce did such a great job. Unless you get like one of the biggest names out there, unless it's Belichick, Harbaugh, maybe Vrabel, but and there's the rumors out there that Jim Harbaugh would be the one. It would be about the only guy that you could justify not just hiring Antonio Pierce as your permanent head coach after the job he did as interim. We've seen so many times where, the interim coach gives you that bump that first year, and then it turns out, maybe he's not actually a head coach, and everyone just got pumped up and played a little harder the rest of the year. But as far as big picture goes, maybe that guy wasn't ready or that guy wasn't head coach material after all. Only they know inside the building, or they have a better idea inside the building than we do about that with Antonio Pierce. If they're even thinking about bringing in another coach, maybe they're not sure about Antonio Pierce, or maybe it is just one of those whales is the only thing that could swing them. So as far as the Raiders go, I think it's Antonio Pierce or like Jim Harbaugh, and that's it.
100% agree. Now, in this whale conversation, I think we have to include Belichick. I mean, as of the time we're recording this, we don't know anymore. He can slow play things. Some things I've been hearing about Belichick, and I want to get back to the Raiders in a minute, are he's just kind of playing hardball. Like, you want to trade me? Well, I can put my stamp of approval on that. I'm not giving up my first round pick for my new team so you can trade me. Everyone wants to do these Sean Payton deals, but that's great. But why would I hurt my new team and help you when I can just make you fire me? You know what I mean? I can sit here and I'll go there anyway.
let's say it's the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's draw some connections there. Let's say Belichick says, I want to go to sunny Southern California and leave the East Coast for the first time in, I don't know, 40 years.
Right.
He's always coached. He's grew up, coached everything on the East Coast, right? As far as I know.
Giants, Browns.
Yeah.
Military school. Yeah, right.
I don't know if that's a long shot. I don't know if the Spanos family would go there anyway. But let's say that's the connection.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the Chargers and if you're Belichick, you're not giving up the number 5 pick in the NFL draft.
Right. Or even Atlanta, they have 8 or 9 or whatever. I'm not giving you that to New England and then play against, help one of my 31 opponents and hurt myself. When coaches trades have always been weird to me. I think that now they have more power than ever. I mean, Peyton wasn't even in the league, so maybe that was a little different at the time. He was one to get back in, and he didn't care if the Saints gained something. But still, why do I want to hurt the team I go to? So that's one angle I think to think about a lot here. And maybe Vrabel said the same thing, like, "Oh, fire me." I'm sure somebody would have given you a draft pick for Vrabel, but I don't want my new team to have to do that. So the other thing that get back to Pierce, because I'm with you, I think it's a Whale or Pierce. He's earned that. My only concerns with Pierce are he's only been a coach for like 4 years. I mean, a coach.
And that's what happens a lot with interim coaches. It's not being one of the coordinators that's calling plays. He was a linebacker coach, and then you just this is the best rah guy. He can rally the troops. He's going to be the interim coach. But the experience, he hasn't done the extensive game planning that someone who's been a coordinator for a decade has done. Clearly knows a lot about the game and knows a lot about the organization, cares about the organization, which is huge too. And you need somebody who can rally the troops. So he's got that going for him. It's just big picture. Where is he at? He hasn't coached that long.
There's rough waters and things he's never dealt with ahead. I mean, there's no question about that. And now expectations are different. It's not a cutesy story. You got to go to the media every week and deal with them and every little bad thing and every coaching decision's under a bigger microscope. But maybe even my bigger concern, and I'm not doubting him, he might be the savant, but he also doesn't know that many people. When you coach a long time, you get fired a lot. You're on a lot of different staffs. You end up with friends and, you work 100-hour weeks together and you become very close with you. Yeah, exactly. So this applies to all defensive coaches that are in the coaching circle for me right now, even to a slightly degree with like Vrabel and Belichick, who this doesn't apply to. They know everybody. But if I'm the owner, Pierce is a good example, but there'll be other defensive guys, like the defense coordinator for the Ravens. I'm sitting down with that guy and be like, I think you'll be a fine head coach. Coach McDonald, I think you're going to be a tremendous head coach. But who's going to be your offensive coordinator? And if you land me a great one, is he going to leave in a year? Like D'Amico Ryan's perfect example. Hey, D'Amico, you might be coach of the year this year, but you just lost your offensive coordinator to the Falcons after 1 year.
Yeah.
And Vrabel went through that. Like Vrabel had LaFleur, he had Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, can you get a third one? Like, it's like picking a new quarterback every 2 years. You get a hit 3 times in a row. That's
and
hard.
Having a quarterback would help that.
Sure.
Theoretically. So,
massively.
But if you're the Chargers, you just went defensive head coach. Do you go defensive head coach again? Or do you say, screw this, we need an offensive-minded head coach because our defense still wasn't good anyway, and we want to help out Justin Herbert? I actually like Harbaugh in Los Angeles Chargers.
Yes, me too.
Because he is the ultimate confidence instiller. And he can come in and instantly, I think, have things going in the right direction with Justin Herbert and have him at a maximum confidence level. And they really need, that big, I think they need that big swing with the Chargers too. So if I had to guess right now, I think Pierce stays with and by the way, the defensive coordinator for the Raiders, Patrick Graham's getting head coach interviews too. I wonder if they would go there instead of Pierce, which would be interesting and kind of hard to do, but imagine Pierce loses
somehow keep them together, I mean, somehow not like it'd be a group job, but we'll call you defense coordinator and assistant head coach and give you a little bump or something like that, maybe to help Pierce out, be his wingman, Back to the Chargers. I know we got to get to a break, but if I'm ownership / front office, I want a whale. I want a culture changer. I want Harbaugh, and just because I think this organization needs a total 180 the way they play, everything, all the above. But I also, and this is more of a once somebody gets hired conversation, when we get to free agency, if I'm the Chargers, I might consider not tanking, but trading Bosa, Allen, Williams, Derwin, get all my bad contracts out of the building, have no cap space this year. Poor Herbert's going to have a tough go of it. He's got Slater and Zion and a couple of linemen. Eckler's gone. You win 3 games. You have a high pick this year, and then you paid all your bills. You know what I mean?
You're probably trading down on the draft this year too, adding more.
Yeah,
picks. It's all
makes
about
more sense, right?
And building it right, and building around your quarterback. And so,
draft a bunch of linemen. Right?
If not Harbaugh, maybe Ben Johnson. Go help out Justin Herbert, and I just don't. It doesn't feel like a Vrabel or Belichick destination anyway.
Me neither. I think Harbaugh there, Pierce in I would say Oakland, but the Raiders.
Yeah, I will say, for the Commanders having the number 2 pick in the draft, and for the Chargers having Justin Herbert already, I do think that makes it a pretty big time destination. So
yeah,
I'm not going to say that they can't get the biggest of biggest whales there potentially too. So that's an interesting one. I think a lot of coaches, GMs are probably looking at that job thinking this is actually a really good job.
I agree. I think Washington's a better job than give it credit for. And I'm sure that there's some stink of former ownership still there, but it's on the way out at least. You're at least fumigating before you got there. Mm-hmm. And I think Atlanta's a better job than you think. I mean, if you have a path to a quarterback, which maybe that's offering the Bears a fortune for number 1 or a second for Fields or signing Cousins, but I'm not saying they're a quarterback away, but if I'm Belichick and I'm looking at Atlanta, I'm like, I can get Brissett and then I'm going to try to trade up. I could win that division this year,
Let's put some more names to that, finish up this question and move on. We got a lot of good ones in today's Peacock and Williamson mailbag, talking about Jordan Love in Aaron Rodgers' shadow, and a couple of questions about the NFL playoffs as well next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Jace Medical and the Jace Case. And I know we come here to talk about sports, kind of escape from the crazy realities of real life. But let's talk about real life for just a second and preparing for potentially the worst that can happen, being prepared. And according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of some antibiotics like amoxicillin. And, right now it's in the middle of flu season, and you could be caught in a natural disaster. There are storms in certain places, earthquakes in other places. And maybe you're just traveling with your family and you're not going to be connected to society. You're not going to be in cell phone range, and you have special needs and certain needs for certain medications for your family or for yourself. And you don't want to get stuck with supply chain issues or anything that could keep you from life-saving medication that you potentially need. And that's where Jace Medical and the Jace Case comes in. The Jace Case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among many, many others. This stuff could happen to any of us. And that's why you go to jacemedical.com, complete your physician visit. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important than now to be prepared. So go to jacemedical.com and use our promo code Locked On to get $20 off your order. That is Jace Medical, JASE medical.com. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is also brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. And it's not just you against a pool of other players. You're not playing against pros at PrizePicks. You're not playing against sharks at PrizePicks. It's just you against the numbers. Here's what you do. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you pick more or less than their stat projections on PrizePicks and watch the winnings roll in. Up to 25 times your money this football season, this basketball season, this hockey season, this baseball season. You get the idea at PrizePicks. Select 2 or more players and turn $10 into $250. And you can make some combo bets as well, which is really cool. It's a new feature at PrizePicks. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3 points made plus receptions in a given day. So DFS made easy at PrizePicks. All you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, Pierce to the Raiders, Harbaugh to the Chargers. So there's no Belichick yet. If Belichick leaves, I like Belichick, Matt, to the Atlanta Falcons.
Me too.
And then Vrabel to the Patriots. But if Belichick doesn't leave, how about just Vrabel right down to Atlanta?
Not bad. Not bad at all. I could see that, but I think Belichick's leaving. I firmly believe that. I hope that doesn't pop, the next hour before, right when this comes out or whatever. I mean, I think they're going to slow play that.
Okay, so Vrabel goes to New England, and you like Belichick with Atlanta more than, say, the Washington Commanders?
Yes. Those are my two spots for him, though. I think both of them are.
I'm sorry, Panthers fans. I just don't see any of these big-time coaches going to work with David Tepper.
I don't either. I mean, so the other two that come to mind are Johnson in Detroit and McDonald in Baltimore, but of course they're going to have to wait. I mean, there's that part where now we wait for some candidates. What do you think about Johnson saying, I don't want to deal with Carolina. I want to go to Tennessee?
That's where I had him. Ben Johnson.
Really?
I like that connection. Old school, grind it out coach. It's like, nope, Will Levis is our new young quarterback. Let's flip it. We want a new age, offensive minded. Let's score some points. Head coach.
Yeah, I mean, just it seems like there was such a conflict between Vrabel and front office and ownership that they might. I'm not saying they could push Johnson around, but a rookie head coach might make sense there. Of you kind of learn from us and telling me how I screwed up with AJ Brown every day.
We got to get going quick on this, but because I don't want to take the whole episode on this one question, but I want to go to the Bears really quick because that's another job that I still think could be open. And I don't care whether Justin Fields stays or you're drafting another quarterback. You got to make a change on the offensive side of the ball. And that's just another new offense coordinator for Justin Fields. And if you're changing,
my buddy Luke Getsy just got let go this morning.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Oh well. I can't. So just saw that.
Okay, well, hold on.
All right, bring it on. Oh,
I didn't see that one yet. Okay. 2 days in a row, we got breaking news. Luke Getsy had to go, and I think that solidifies it right now. So Eberflus is going to
members of his staff.
Right. Did you hear the quote? I just want to read it real quick from DJ Moore about Luke Getsy. He was asked about Luke Getsy in the offense, and he said, quote, "It just comes down to us getting explosives on the offensive side. We got the players to do it. We got our quarterback to do it. Everything else, we just need to call the plays that put us in position." So when
so who are you talking about here, DJ?
One of the biggest leaders on the team, and DJ Moore quickly became that for the Bears when he showed up after the offseason trade last year, pretty much putting the onus on Luke Getsy. So I'm not surprised that 24 hours later he's now gone and out in Chicago, and it hasn't been a good offense since he's been there.
So again, if we're just reacting to immediate news, and this happened like an hour ago, so we are. Makes me think Eberflus is safe then, though. They would canned everybody.
Yeah, no doubt. That was a life-saving move for Matt Eberflus. The team seems to rally around him. He doing a good job of defense. But again, we're talking about these defense. If I'm an owner, if I'm a GM, I'm really trying to get a really, really good offensive-minded head coach because it is so hard. Even if you get it right with that head coach, you get it right with the defensive-minded guy, he could still have trouble. We've seen it with Vrabel. We've seen it now with Eberflus in Chicago to try to fix the rest of it and try to. It's hard to get a quarterback if you don't have a good offensive coordinator. It's hard to help the quarterback that might be the right pick, and you still don't know if it's the right pick at quarterback because it's been coordinated so poorly for you. And if you don't want to bring in a new quarterback with still a poorly coordinated offense because he's going to get ruined too. It helps if you already know you have a good quarterback first, and then you can evaluate the coordinator easier. It's just a tough situation to be in there. And so hopefully this is the offseason that turns around for Chicago with the offensive side of the ball and finding their true quarterback of the future. But it's not going to be a head coach change now that Luke Getsy is gone.
So we'll talk to no end about should they trade Fields, blah, blah, blah. But now their immediate need, no matter who's playing quarterback in 2024, is now they need a quarterback developer.
Quick question for you here. We talked about Belichick and the whales. If you're Belichick, if you're Mike Vrabel, Matt, you are a big time whale of a head coach candidate. Do you prefer the Chargers? Do you prefer the Washington Commanders, or do you prefer the Atlanta Falcons?
I'm really warming up to Atlanta because I think their defense got noticeably better. if we look at 2 years ago, Atlanta had a great running game with a really good O-line, and that went backwards, but you now have Bijan and basically the same O-line, the Lindstroms of the world and Matthews and those guys. I look at Pitts and London and Bijan as massively untapped resources. I look at that division as I could get to the top of this thing in no time. I don't know if I can overcome Mahomes. And how do I get a quarterback?
Yeah, how do you get a quarterback? What's the plan for quarterback? You got the 8th pick. If you're Washington, you have the 2nd pick. That's a pretty easy answer. If you are Los Angeles Chargers, you already got Justin Herbert. It's a pretty easy answer. And you'd be lucky with the 2nd pick to get a quarterback as good as Justin Herbert in a lot of cases for the Washington Commanders. So that's, to me, why I rank those jobs in that order. I go Chargers, Washington, Atlanta, because quarterback is that important.
It's the hardest thing to get in sports is a franchise quarterback, and one team has one.
Justin Fields to Atlanta. Does that fix it?
I'm at least interested.
And if you're a defensive coach, who's your offensive coordinator is going to fix Justin Fields?
Right. So this is crazy talk, in my opinion, but I've heard some people say the Chargers, if they blow it up, should also trade Herbert for 3 first-round picks or whatever. I'm not in that camp ever. I mean, if you got the guy, you're always going to be searching for the guy. No. But if that would ever happen and I was Atlanta, I'd say take my firstborn and give me Herbert, and I'll be the best team in the division by far.
Very different. That's what I'm talking about with that,
exactly.
That capital of a quarterback, the 2nd pick versus the 8th pick. The Atlanta Falcons are miles away with the 8th pick in trying to figure that out. And it's not that they can't find that guy there, and it's not that the number 2 pick is guaranteed to be good. In a lot of cases, the track record doesn't show that Washington is that likely to hit on it. But as far as this draft process goes, and what we know about these quarterbacks 1 and 2, look like a better opportunity than the rest. And we'll see if that turns out.
We often ramble, and I screw up your schedule too often. But again, if Eberflus is staying, which he is, and he loves Fields, everybody loves Fields, and number 1 pick is shopping, Atlanta's a perfect team too to go up to. Whatever you want.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow in a mock draft episode as well.
No matter what, Atlanta and Chicago need to talk.
Yeah. So Thursday, we're talking mock draft. We're looking at the top of the NFL draft, and I think quarterback trade scenarios is going to be a big part of that one as well. All right, more from the Peacock and Williamson mailbag next. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. And a lot of times people say, hey, it's a new year, it's a new me. That's the wrong way to look about it. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. There's a lot of good happening in your life. Expand on that and continue making progress in that direction. And so therapy helps you find those strengths, and you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is you fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and if you don't hit it off with that therapist, that's okay. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, and use that convenience to get therapy on your timeline when you need it with BetterHelp Online Therapy. Celebrate the progress you've already made at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. And today, get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Okay, we touched on this for a second about coaches in playoff teams. And Joey Bag of Donuts, the frequent question asker, says, is it an advantage for a team to make the playoffs because teams needing coaches won't take your coordinators because they have to wait to interview them? And why do teams insist on being so quick on hiring a new coach?
Well, then you get the process started quicker. I mean, if hypothetical, Atlanta hires Vrabel tonight, he can go build his staff. He can start scouting his players. He's employed by the team. He's got a month ahead of whoever else to prepare for the offseason and next season, and goofy things. I mean, people don't think about these things. But when I went to Akron, it was, and by no means is my career anything like these guys, but when I got to Akron, we were in the midst of recruiting season, and I was basically in charge of recruiting. I didn't know where the library was. I didn't know where to park. I'm trying to teach kids and parents about the school, and I know nothing about it. What's your favorite pizza joint in Atlanta? You need to know these things, so getting there as soon as possible has a lot of advantages. I do think being one of the coaches on the Niners or Ravens or whatever is a disadvantage. I think you're going to lose some ties because people are going to have to wait for you.
Yep, and it's easier to fill the rest of your staff as well. And all
they're
those
dropping like flies.
You might have, if you're a head coach candidate and you are on a Super Bowl team, and you're doing an interview the week before the Super Bowl or something, and then you have to wait until after the Super Bowl, and then you're finally hired, and then you're hiring your assistants. All the best assistants have already been hired up by the other teams that already got their head coaches.
It's a very faulty process. And, ideally would be in the perfect world, you're not allowed to talk to anyone until the day after the Super Bowl go.
It's like free agency.
Exactly.
For coaches, yeah.
But of course, that's never, ever going to happen. It's not feasible. And then the other aspect of it, I think you and I talk about this every year at this time, is, okay, the Lions, both their coordinators are getting attention. Well, shouldn't you be preparing for the Rams? You know what I mean? Like gearing up for a head coach's interview is not a 5-minute conversation, or you and I before the air, like, hey, what do you want to talk about today? Like, this takes a lot of time out of your week.
Right. Yeah. Especially for coaches. So if you're an assistant GM looking for a GM job, that team's going to be okay that week, getting the roster
right.
Play like that.
You don't go to LSU that week. Okay.
Right,
Go next week. You're right.
Ryan says, are playoffs overrated with 8-win teams getting in, 10-win teams sometimes getting left out? Do teams owners overvalue playoff appearances by teams with really little to no chance to actually win the Super Bowl?
You and I in the dark times, there's like that 3-week period, dark times, like it's the dark ages or something. When we're hurting for content, should do a whole podcast on this, because I deal with this every day of my life. Like I have gotten a check from 2 different NFL teams in my life, one with the Browns helmet on it, one with the Steelers helmet. I can promise you Browns people don't look at it like the playoffs are overrated. Better example, the Lions don't look at it like getting in the playoffs is overrated. I mean, but my hometown, where I presently get a check from, signed by Mr. Rooney, I hear this all the time. Tomlin's gone a million seasons in a row without a winning record, but he hasn't won a playoff game in 4 or 5 years. Who cares? I don't want to win 9 or 10 games. I don't want to just get in the playoffs and get blown out by the Bills. I see both sides, but I'd rather be the Steelers than Lions, especially for the last 50 years. What I mean? Not this year, but
they're and it's a similar question. We get a lot of questions about, Kirk Cousins. Where's the fit for him? You pay him? How much do you pay him? Tua, is he worth getting one of the top contracts? Is he going to be overpaid? And it's like, well, half the league would kill to have Kirk Cousins or Tua playing quarterback. Right. And so you almost have to pay him because, but are you locking yourself into, we're for sure not going to have Allen or Mahomes, but who has Allen or Mahomes?
There's 5 of them.
Right? So it gets this, do you lock yourself into mediocrity, and is mediocrity okay? And if you're, if you're the Falcons, you're drafting 8 every year and you're trying to be competitive. You're the Titans trying to be competitive. You win a couple extra games. Does it actually hurt you to get better because you don't have a top 2 pick to get maybe that difference making quarterback that you actually need? So it's sort of a circular conversation. And I have accused the Vikings, and you kind of talk about the Steelers there as well. The Vikings have been that team where it's like, you got to do something. You can't just keep being in the middle of the league every single year. Be bad or be good, but pick one side.
I mean, there is a purgatory that's awful. I mean, I always think about like the Matt Schaub Texan-led team. They had like Andre Johnson and J.J. Watt, but they'd sneak in at 8 wins, Bill O'Brien 9 wins, and they're unbelievably non-threatening. Like, I don't think the Steelers are threatening this year, but I do think it's Steeler fandom, or no matter what, I wanted them to get in this year as opposed to having the 16th pick in the draft. I mean, instead they'll pick 22nd and get playoff experience. You know what I mean? Like, there's something to be said for that, even if you get your doors blown off in Buffalo, which very well could happen.
We had a question I wanted to get to about Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and their potential landing spots. We got plenty of time to talk free agency here. I want to get to this question from Grant and finish it off here. How differently would we be talking about Jordan Love if he wasn't playing in Aaron Rodgers' shadow? Like Rodgers stayed in Green Bay and Love was traded to Atlanta or something like that, and it played out this way.
Well, we could rewind 20 years ago and ask the same question about Rodgers. I mean, it's always awful to follow the man. I mean, you don't want to be the guy that follows the guy. You want to be the guy after that. And that same is going to be probably true for Belichick's successor.
I mean, Is it in some ways better to be in a shadow and get 3 years and sit on the bench
I think it's a
than
great
being
strategy
expected to be amazing on day one? I think that's even more difficult.
Like Lawrence was expected to be amazing before he even put his pads on, where Love can be like, I'll chill here and learn from Aaron, and Aaron can chill and learn from Brett. And, it's a great strategy if you could do it. I mean, if you draft the quarterback when you don't need one.
Right. And even this season had the opportunity to kind of slow play it in and not have to be amazing all at once. And he wasn't expected because, like, this guy's great. He couldn't possibly be as good as the last guy.
To the question, though, I do think the national media and Joe average fan is a little slow to the table of how well Love has played, especially the last 6 weeks, 2 months. And a lot of the stuff they had problems with early in the season was rookie receivers running wrong routes, not knowing where to line up. They were the youngest offense in the league.
And this is really how those ideas get changed. And I think people are coming around to it, and people that really follow the sport and, the film guys out there, they really love Jordan Love and what he's doing right now, especially with all the young receivers he's doing it with on offense. And you go as the 7 seed to Dallas, the 2 seed, and beat them in the playoffs. People are really going to be paying attention. And I think that would end pretty quickly of being underrated and not getting the credit.
Let's wrap it up here. But I think this correlates back to the playoff question. If you're the youngest offense in the league with a first-year starting quarterback, even if I go to Dallas and get my doors blown off, I want to go to the playoffs.
That's pretty important. Yeah. So every playoff appearance is not created equal. Thanks for all the questions out there. Apologies to the ones we did not get to. We're going to look at a little NFL draft tomorrow before we go make our picks and preview all of the wild card playoff games on Friday's episode of Peacock and Williamson. Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.